Greetings, folks, and welcome to episode 89 of the Lessons from the Cockpit show. I'm your host, Mark Hasara, and for over 60 years, my passion has been everything aviation. As you can see around me on the Lessons from the Cockpit show, we interview and debrief some of the most fascinating and intriguing pilots, aircrew members, maintainers, and aviation enthusiasts from all over the world. We want to hear their stories, but more importantly, what did they learn from these extreme and extraordinary military, commercial, and even private aviation environments? Our purpose is to show how does the aviation world work, but more importantly, increase critical thinking skills both in the air and on the ground. A lot of the stories that you hear on the Lessons from the Cockpit show are being told for the very first time. This episode of the Lessons from the Cockpit show is brought to you and financially supported by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar. These are 4, 6, and 8-foot beautiful graphics like you see above me of the KC-135. That's my airplane when I was stationed in Kadena, 8874. Printed on vinyl that you can peel off and stick to any flat surface. These are exhaustively detailed and researched, folks. You can even read the stenciling on the AIM-9 missile arming handles. There's 149 ready to print graphics, ready to go right now. From World War II Me-109s all the way up to 5th gen fighters, airlifters, bombers, the whole works. Or let us do a custom one like the 135 behind me with your name on it from your unit with a particular bomb load. We can do that for you. Go to wallpilot.com and take a look at the 149 ready to print, or let us do a custom for you. On today's show, we're continuing our interview and our discussion with Eric Z in Berlin. He has published a lot of kids' books. I didn't know that he worked on C-17s. He's going to talk about that a little bit. And we're going to continue our discussion about hang gliding and sailplane. So, grab an adult beverage of your choice, sit down, strap in, and let's begin the Lessons from the Cockpit show with my good friend Eric Z in Berlin. Welcome back, Eric. How's things in
Hey,
Berlin?
great to be back. Yeah, it's great to be back. How was your trip?
The trip to Moon Lake was fun. You know, it's the yearly trek that we make up there. I am not a camper.
Hmm.
I went into the Air Force because we do hotels, but
Yeah.
it's this
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
trout lake that my in-laws have been going to for decades.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
Awesome.
gone up there almost every year we've been married, if I've been here in
Hmm.
the States.
Hmm.
And it's filled with rainbow trout, brown trout, kokanee, and it's just a fabulous place. So,
Yeah,
you
you were
know,
bringing back memories for me while we were talking about my trout fishing in
yeah,
California, Bishop with my brother. Good fish, trout, my favorite.
yeah. But you used to hike up to these mountains to jump off of them, didn't you? Tell us about that
Yes,
experience.
yes. I think I
And
told you about my hang gliding crash, but
mhm.
but I'll tell you about the place. The one of the best places to go hang gliding is still Saboba, California. It's out in the desert between Hemet and kind of like Winchester, and that you've got that huge desert there, just
Yeah.
generating massive thermals. And so what most people don't know about that is that it's right by the Scientology compound, the main Scientology compound. So yeah, and it's even bigger now. When we went there, it was big. They had a huge golf course and a huge building, and they used to wear a different uniform for each day of the week. So we used to fly over them, and we could see their uniforms. And you have to drive past the Scientology compound,
Mhm.
and then go left up the mountain through an Indian reservation, and sometimes they would chase us on their little dirt bikes and stuff. But we were hang gliding pilots, in our pickup trucks, and
Yeah.
we just drove our pickup trucks like dirt bikes, and sooner or later they gave up. They never scalped us or caught us or anything, but it was pretty wild actually. And then so a lot of records were made in Saboba, time to height, time to altitude, all sorts of stuff. I flew from Elsinore to Hemet, Oh, I think I told you that. That's how I got in my
Yeah.
crash.
Yeah.
I came to Saboba with so much altitude, over 8,000 feet, and I had altitude to play with.
Wow.
So then, yeah. So hang gliding, California probably has the best hang gliding in the world. There are some exceptions out there,
Yeah.
but that desert, man, around Bishop
Mm-hmm.
and Bishop and the Owens Valley, that's
Mm-hmm.
where all of those. I mean, you got to take oxygen up with you. You can go up over 10, 12, 20,000 feet if you want
Wow.
to. Yeah, if you want to. And it gets all. So that's the crazy thing. I'm here in Owens Valley, and it's 110 degrees in the desert in Owens Valley, and we're
Oh,
on
gee.
what is the mountain called? I don't remember. So you're all in it, and you have to put on your winter stuff and
Yeah.
gloves because you're going up above 12,000 feet. And the FAA regulations above 12,000, you have to carry oxygen.
Yeah.
Most of us didn't have oxygen. So, but if you're young and dynamic, those are nominal values, right? So we went up to 17,500 is and then I said, okay, I was feeling hypoxic. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, that's it. Come back down. And so you're freezing. But the amazing thing is you don't have to come back down in those hang gliders, man. When you get some good thermals, that's why Owens Valley, almost all of the records were made at Owens Valley. So I came back down and then, oh man, my hands started like shooting needles in them from the frostbite and stuff. And so it's really dynamic. You're up in minus degrees, 17,000 feet, and then you come all the way back down to the desert floor at 110
110
degrees,
degrees.
and you thaw
Oh
out on the
man.
way down, and you're just screaming because your hands are hurting so much. So today to this day, I still have frostbite in the tips of my fingers, and so they freeze up really fast.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of
People don't
people have
think
been
about that.
killed there. Yeah, a lot of people that do that, they go up too high and then they pass out, hypoxia, and then sometimes you don't know where they land, but they don't they don't survive sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Say a moment ago, you talked about like time to climb records and endurance records. Would you
right.
share with us what some of those records are, if you've got the
Oh,
numbers?
not in my head, but for hang gliding, I'm talking about
Yeah.
hang gliding.
Yeah. Just hang
I mean,
gliding.
these guys went up from the desert floor to like 25,000 feet in minutes. These when you get in one of these thermals, it's stronger than an elevator. You get this feeling. It's almost like the Earth is going down as you're
Yeah.
watching. They're the strongest thermals in the world. It's amazing. That's why I've always liked hang gliding and sailplane flying better than motor flying because you don't really thermal in motor
No,
planes,
no, you
motor
don't.
planes, planes with a motor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy, yeah. And when you've literally strapped a wing to your back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and when you get up there, you got this feeling of Icarus, and the air is sweeter, it's thinner,
Hmm.
and oh man, I got so many stories. One time we went to Mexico, Coates Cliffs, and we were literally soaring with eagles, golden eagles. Well, they're brown actually, but and on the cliffs you have ridge lift, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the wind hits the ridge, and you don't get as high as thermals in Owens Valley, but it's very predictable and it's very stable, so it's perfect for
Hmm.
beginners. And the Coates Cliffs I think they're 11 miles long, so you just fly, and you can get all of your distances
Yeah.
in your logbook. You can say, oh, okay, my first cross country flight, 5, 10, 20 miles, and you can just really rack up your
Oh,
hours and
yeah.
distances there. But anyways, the eagles will come and check you out, and so I'm flying along, and there's two golden eagles right behind me, and they're like fighters. They get your six, yeah. They don't get in front of you or to the side of you. They get behind you, ready to shoot you down. Yeah, so you're looking, hey, how you
Too
doing?
close for missiles, switching to guns.
Yes, and they are looking at you. They're looking at your eyes, man. It's crazy. Yeah, hang gliding was really fun. I don't do it anymore. I kind of made the switch to sailplanes, and then I don't do that anymore either. Got married and had kids, and sailplanes are very time intensive. You won't see your kids on the weekend anymore if you do, because in Germany, you have sailplane clubs, and it's one of
Oh
the
yeah.
best places to learn
Yeah.
sailplane or flying in the world.
Yeah.
And then it's very easy to get your motor Ziegler And then
Mhm.
that's just a half a step away from your normal PPL, right? And
Mhm.
but we're talking about clubs, so you're talking about 12 hours a day. You're
Mhm.
not going to see your family much, and so
Yeah.
I haven't been flying since 2012, I think.
Huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Terrible.
what are some of the distance records in hang gliding? You mentioned that too, because
Oh,
obviously when you get to this Cibola place with all
mhm,
these thermals, I mean,
mhm.
obviously endurance is also huge there
So there's
because
there's
people are staying up for long periods of time, I'm sure.
Mhm. I would, it's been a long time. I would have to look that up. When I was flying, Larry Tudor was
Hmm.
the local matador. He's flew first. The record was over 350 miles. Just from thermal to thermal across the continental United States. And
Wow.
I'm sure he's been over 1,000 miles. And so the thing is, there were other people in Australia that did this ridge lift along the coast of Australia,
Uh-huh.
and like that. I don't know if that really counts because you're just going back and forth. I mean, you
Yeah.
can rack up hundreds of miles doing that. Like I
Yeah.
said, when the weather's good, you don't have to come down until it gets dark or until you
Yeah.
want to. And so in the 90s the record was over 350 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's crazier is the record that was standing in Europe. It's still a standing record in Europe for sailplanes is from here in northern Germany, right next to me is Lübeck,
Yeah.
to Biarritz in France. It's thousands of miles. Yeah, in one
Wow.
flight in a hang glider. Hans Werner Gross, they call him the Eagle, the Adler. And so look it up on a map.
Yeah, I
Northern
will.
Germany, Lübeck, all the way to southern France, Biarritz, in one shot.
In one shot. Wow.
Yeah, no motors, average indicated airspeed of like 120 kilometers an hour, and no gas. And Biarritz, Lübeck to Biarritz, and I think that's still the record here in Europe.
And see,
It's
a lot of people don't understand. And you mentioned it just a second ago, going from thermal to thermal to thermal. All right.
yeah, yeah.
And how do you do that in your hang glider? How do you know
Oh, that's the
thermal to
funnest.
thermal?
Well, we have a vario. So you have
Uh-huh.
vertical speed indicators on your primary flight
Yeah.
display, right?
Hmm.
You guys got a little bar or something,
Yeah.
right? We have a audio, a peeper, a vario.
Yeah.
And so when you go up, well, you can feel it. You can
Yeah.
feel it. You
Obviously.
you
It's
don't
like,
need the instruments, but you'll get more if you have the instruments, right? It's
yeah.
better. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get this feedback loop going. It's like almost like a biofeedback loop. When it goes up, then they go, and when it goes down, it goes do 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 do. And they're all different. Yeah, some of them go beep 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 beep, beep, and some of them are silent on the way down, but you can tune them any way you want.
Yeah.
There's hundreds of different varios. And so for, you usually learn without varios, and then
Uh-huh.
you can feel the lift. And you can feel like when you're getting into a thermal, you can feel one wing dip and the other not. So then
Okay.
you have to go to the high wing.
Yeah.
So you have to turn into it. That's really hard in a hang glider to turn against the forces. But
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can see
yeah,
that.
yeah. And then you
Amazing.
have like in sailplanes, you have a McCready ring that
Uh-huh.
tells you best speed to fly and stuff like that. You can have all of that in your varios now that says
Yeah.
best speed to fly. And so then it's a lot of navigation and a lot of just know-how where you ask other pilots and you learn book learning too. Where are the thermals? So the riverbeds, the deserts are good.
Yeah.
The mountains have beards where a lot of things, we have things called house thermals. So
Hmm.
mountains are shaped in a certain way to where there will always be a thermal there when the conditions are good.
Yeah.
And then that's the exciting part. You got to get enough altitude to get to the next thermal. And if you don't make it, well, you're
You're
landing
going
a
down
little early,
somewhere. Yeah.
But there's indicators too. When you look up at the sky and you see clouds in a row, that's called a cloud street. And if you can get
Yeah.
under that, you got cloud suck all the way as long as the clouds go. And the world
Oh,
records,
yeah.
yeah, the world records have been set in Chile, in the Andes Mountains, where you get wave lift off of the mountains. It's like ridge lift,
Oh,
but
yeah.
much higher. They're going up
Yes.
way over
Yes.
20,000 feet with oxygen tanks.
Yes.
And these guys flying up and down the Andes, we'll have to look that up too. It's thousands of miles with these guys, and
But that's
yeah,
amazing being up that high, you know?
yeah,
I
that was
guess
one that was kind of on my bucket list to go do wave lift in the Alps, in the Swiss Alps. I can still go do that. I have to get back into a club,
yeah.
and it's yeah. You should
So
get into sailplane flying. It's so awesome. You'll love it.
they have one club over in Heber,
Yeah.
and I had looked into it because I had met some sailplane folks at one of the Hill Air Force Base
Mm,
air shows, and they
awesome.
talked about this. You know, they go, "Hey, you know, we have this club over here, and they take
Mm,
off out of Heber, and of course, you know, they're surrounded by mountains over
mm,
there. All right, because
yeah.
Timpanogos and everything. I think Timpanogos is like a 12,000 footer, something like that. It's really big, and there's other places in lakes and other places for thermals over there. And they says, "Oh yeah, we've got guys that'll stay up for 4 or 5 hours in
Yeah.
some of
So,
these and some of these sailplanes." You know,
yeah.
uh,
Sometimes it's your bladder that tells you you got to come down, you know?
yeah, isn't that the
Yeah.
truth? They don't
Yeah.
have piddle packs and sailplanes, huh?
But it is an eerie feeling when you've been fighting all your time to get up, and then sometimes the weather's so good you can't come down. That is a weird feeling when you have to fight to come down. That can be scary. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It's
I didn't even think
crazy.
of that. You know, because
Yeah.
the kind of flying I did, you know, I just okay, we're going down, we're gonna
Yeah.
land,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, there's an advantage to that for sure when you can choose your landing zone, you know?
Oh, I'll bet, I'll bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but flying's amazing. I have to get back into it. Talking to you, man, I got to get back into it, man.
Yeah,
I got to go look at
a
my
lot of
local
people have
sailplane club.
a lot of people have told me the same thing. You know, what do you mean you don't fly? You flew for 24 years, now you're not flying anymore? And I go, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Well, you can take a break for the kids, but then
Well,
after a while,
and
you
see, I
know,
don't have any kids at home now. Okay. And they've
yeah,
always said,
perfect.
you know, you're in a perfect place to do this now. And I thought
Yeah.
they have a, what do they call it? It's, it takes into account all your time, all my time in the 135. Okay.
Oh,
It's
okay.
an equivalency test. I got like an
Oh,
FAA equivalency test.
nice.
And, you know, it's funny too, because just a couple of months ago, I was flying the KC-46 sim, the new tanker, the Pegasus tanker. And it's amazing how all of that stuff comes back and pretty
Yeah.
quickly too. Okay.
Mm,
You know, oh, I can't do that on this instrument approach because that's, you know, against the
yeah.
regulations, or, you know, that's not how they do whatever. And all that stuff came flooding back. And
But yeah.
during the half hour I was flying the thing, it was amazing that all of those regulations and numbers and everything were coming back into my head
Mm,
fairly quickly.
yeah.
So,
Oh man,
yeah,
there's a lot of regulations. Even as a hang glider pilot, I forgot what it was, FAR 135 or something. I don't remember. A
yeah,
lot of regulations. But hey, the KC-46 doesn't have a trim wheel with a knob on it to break your knee, does it?
nope, it
Or
doesn't.
and no runaway trim switch either, huh?
No, that's not true. There is one.
Oh,
It's in the
okay.
same place. Okay.
Oh,
This is one of the weird things about Boeing and Boeing
uh,
engineering. Okay.
uh-huh.
Um, you have the stab trim switch here in your thumb, obviously. Okay.
Mm,
And on the other side, it's your other thumb. All right. You have the trim wheel, which is right here next to you. Okay. And it has a handle on it, you know, so you can crank it too. Okay. And man, if you get hit with that sucker, it hurts. It hurts. All right. I've only done it one time.
Then
And
you learn.
yeah, then you learn. Okay. And then there's always an electronic stab trim switch cutout, a cutout switch. And it's always in the same place in every Boeing airplane. And it's like right behind the throttle quadrant. All right. And to the side. So that if that trim wheel starts spinning and spinning and spinning, you know you've got runaway trim. You just reach
Mm,
down and go stab trim switch cut out, and it
mm,
and it cuts all the electricity off to it,
mm.
which is a good thing and a bad thing, because that thing just ran away and now your airplane is like horribly out of trim.
Oy.
And in order to be able to trim the airplane, sometimes you have to do like negative G, okay, which in the tanker we don't do very much of. and man,
I wouldn't, huh?
you go into
Yeah.
this like parabola thing like this, to kind of lighten the
Yeah.
load on the airplane, and you're just cranking that thing like
So you can crank it.
crazy.
Otherwise, it's too tough,
Yeah.
huh? Yeah.
Otherwise it's really tough. And the 737 crashes because of that trim system they put in the back.
Mm.
Uh,
MCAS.
the MCAS, they actually had pilots that came to the simulator and were trying to do that. And they were saying that in order to be able to move that trim wheel, you had to put like almost negative G on the airplane because it was that difficult to move.
But
That
does the
difficult.
simulator replicate that problem?
It does now. It
Ah.
does now. And
Mm.
and it was what we call a boldface procedure in the KC-135.
Mhm.
And so every time you went into the sim, you did some kind of emergency. And it was normally stab, trim, malfunction right after your decision speed, just before you're about to rotate off the ground, because that's really the critical part. And then you have that thing
Yeah.
run away because you're
Yeah.
bringing up the flaps, you're bringing up the gear,
Yeah.
and you're going through a lot of trim changes, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
that thing's stuck,
Yeah.
and you kind of have to level off, in order to be able to make it move. And even then, if it's so out of trim, you can't.
Yeah.
And you would actually have to bunt the airplane over like this to take the pressure off the
Yeah.
trim wheel so you could crank it.
Yeah.
And
Terrible.
of course, doing this little bump thing is very unnatural for a KC-135,
Mm.
because you could feel the negative G as you
Yeah.
did it. So,
Can you do that with the full load?
yeah, I've done it in a heavyweight jet
Mm.
in the simulator.
Mm.
We
Mm.
always practice this stuff in the simulator, but
But isn't that a universal by all flying?
yeah,
The worst is landing and takeoff, right?
yeah,
So when
absolutely,
in our sailplane school, we also practice stuff when something goes wrong on takeoff
yeah,
because you don't have enough altitude
yeah,
to go around.
yeah.
So they do a, what do you call it? A Zeilbruch, a simulated cable break.
Oh
So the
yeah,
so you
yeah,
have to do, I don't remember how many flights I did, 80 takeoffs or something,
yeah,
and there's like two or three where the instructor will just spontaneously unhook,
yeah,
and there you
yeah,
are, what are you going to do?
yeah,
You got 100 feet maybe,
yeah.
and then you got to figure out, okay, turn around or not, or just straight land, and oh yeah.
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 Well, see, and we had a procedure for that, a bold face procedure for crash landing immediately after takeoff.
Oh yeah.
And you have to remember, most of these things are created after you've had a major crash. And in ours, it was throttles cut off, and it depended on where the flaps were and the gear were. And if you're landing in the water, you left the gear up, because it would immediately, as soon as the gear hit the water, the nose of the airplane would slap down into the water, and it would
Mhm.
break the fuselage.
Oh yeah. No
And
ditching.
yeah, well, no, you could ditch, okay,
Mhm.
but you had to do it with the gear up.
Mhm.
And it said all water landings you have to do with the gear up, okay. And you have to remember, each individual gear on the KC-135 weighs 10,000 pounds,
Ooh.
5 tons. They're
Wow.
big and they're heavy.
Yeah.
Okay. So crash landing immediately after takeoff, we had the boldface procedure for it, throttles cut off,
Yeah.
flaps extend, gear down unless over water. If you're over water, you never put the gear down, because again, as soon as it hits the water, it causes the nose to slap down. And I guess they had an accident where they did this, and
Mhm.
it snapped the fuselage in half.
That can
And
happen. Yeah.
and of course, when that happens, that sucker's filling with water real fast, and it sank pretty quickly. But
That happened with Asiana, not in the water, but several years back, landing in San Francisco. He came in
oh,
short.
yeah, 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 and he
Yeah.
was low, and he had the
Yep.
nose up really high, and he actually hit
Yep.
the back of the airplane
Exactly.
against the seawall. All right.
Yep. Yep. That'll snap it in half.
Yeah, that'll snap it real fast. Okay.
Yeah.
And
The worst part about that though is that a lot of people died because the ambulance came and ran them over. It was at night.
Yeah,
and the
because everybody's
ambulance
wandering
guys
around.
came and ran over.
Everybody's wandering around.
Yeah.
And at night, when you have that kind of an accident, you're right. One of the problems is, where is everybody? Okay.
Yeah.
Where are they going?
Yeah, that was a
And
bad one.
there's a lot of emergency vehicles coming at a crash like that. A lot of them.
Yeah.
They just show up. And sure enough, man, they hit a bunch of folks. Okay.
Yeah. Well, they were laying down. They were on the ground at
Yeah.
night.
Yeah. Got run over. So
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, let's talk about your F-111 experiences. What was
Yeah.
the first base you were at? Was that Mountain Home?
Well, training is at Shepherd Air Force Base in
Okay.
Texas. And you know, all of the enlisted guys go through Lackland. Now
Uh-huh.
it's called Joint Base Lackland.
Yeah.
And so before you go, though, you really, I know you're an officer, right? But
Yeah.
enlisted guys, they have to get a guaranteed job. So anybody listening that's thinking of going to the forces,
Uh-huh.
I don't know about Army, but Air Force and Navy, they have guaranteed jobs. And you get that at your recruiter already. And if your recruiter doesn't know about it, get out of there because he's a bad recruiter. So, anyways, you get a guaranteed job. I was 431 crew chief. And if you don't get a guaranteed job, they're going to make you the one thing that they never have enough of, and that is the cook.
Yeah.
So when I was in boot camp in Lackland, you know, there was a guy, he was complaining to me, oh man, he was so down. What's wrong, man? He's like, yeah, they made me the cook. I've got a 2-year degree in architecture and they made me the cook. And I said, well, didn't you get a guaranteed job? And he said, no, what's that?
Oh no.
Oh man, I'm so sorry, dude. You're going to be a cook for 4 years, you know? So
Yeah.
you get a guaranteed job before you join the forces. And then, yeah, we did, how long was training? 8 weeks in Shepherd, you know, your first
Uh-huh.
technical training. And I missed honor grad by one point. I was so mad.
Oh no.
Yeah, and then you go to your further technical training, and that was Mountain Home Air Force Base,
Yeah.
and that's where I stayed. And yeah, F-111, that's one cool aircraft. Bombed Libya with it.
Yep.
You can go from here to Russia with nukes. And
Yep.
like I said, I think I told you last time, it's the only aircraft that was part of the SALT treaties because the Russians were so afraid of it.
Yep.
And
I was stationed
yeah,
at Pease with FB-111s. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, they're cool. Did you fly with one?
I did not get to fly in one, but we were refueling them all the time. Because
Yeah.
we had the 393rd, the Tigers, and
Mm.
then the 715th. Okay. So
Yeah.
we had 2 FB-111 squadrons, and of course we're on alert with nuclear weapons. We had 6 FB-111s, and they're all carrying 4 nuclear weapons in them. We called it 2.5 megatons of thermonuclear attitude adjustment.
Okay. Yes, that works. You know what else works is the radar. So it didn't happen to me, but when we have the EF-111s at Mountain Home, and you don't walk in front of any aircraft when the radar's on. You have a cone. Oh, I don't remember. Was it 20 meters in front of the nose, an orange cone?
Yeah.
And that cone means don't get near this aircraft.
Yeah.
My roommate, he was working on the EF-111s that day. He didn't see the cone, and he woke up in the hospital because the radar just
got zapped.
Flattened him.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. So if you're working on a civilian plane or the normal, the normal F-111, it'll heat you up. You'll start sweating and stuff. It won't kill you right away. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Because the radiation is just baking you.
Yes. My friend was cleaning the nose of an Airbus once, an A320, I think, and he was getting all hot and sweating. And the whole time the radar was on.
Oh, no.
So
you would think that would be part of the checklist before you start working on anything. Okay, is the radar turned off?
Oh my God. Yeah, you have all those little nice red tags for the circuit breakers you're supposed to pull, safety procedures, everything. I was pretty good at that. The number one, first of all, you got to ground the aircraft, right?
Yeah.
Most people don't do that, but you got to ground the aircraft and do all that stuff. And but that was the only close call we had it when
Uh-huh.
I was there, and otherwise it was all good. You know, I wish I would have stayed in longer, because the best trick was to say, "Oh, I hear the fairing flapping," you know, because you have those swing wings,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there's a fairing on top of
yeah,
it,
there is.
and
Yeah.
and if it's flapping or making weird noises, then the crew chief has to fly with the pilot to check out the noises, you know. And
I
I
did
was
not know
always,
that. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. So then you get a Mach 1 low terrain flight with the F-111.
Man, that's
I
moving,
never
isn't it?
got that though.
You didn't? It's
No,
that's flat out moving.
yeah,
Because
that is,
I would talk to the FB-111 navs, and of course the pilot's flying and doing his thing, and the nav is doing their thing. Okay, but
yeah,
it wasn't uncommon for them to go down to 50 feet, 500 knots.
yeah,
And that's just smoking across the ground.
yeah, yeah. That
Smoking across the ground. So, did you work on all versions of it, or just the
No,
EF or the
just
D
the
models?
FB, just the FB. My roommate
Okay,
was doing the EFs and I was doing the FBs, and
okay,
like said, my favorite story about that was also during training we had to torque the torque nut of the nose landing gear, and I was the smallest guy in the crew, and yet I was the only one that can hit the oh man, I don't remember how many hundreds of foot-pounds it was, but it was a kind of a big torque wrench with a light on it. So when you hit
yeah,
the, I don't know, let's say 100 foot-pounds, then it lights, and I don't know, I had the wrist action or something. I ate my Wheaties
yeah.
that day, and I was the only one that could torque it, you know, and everybody else was so
And
that was my big my big claim to fame.
and that's a big nut too,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
holds
it
the
is.
nose wheel on. That's a really big one. If you see an F-111 at like a museum, you'll see that is a really big piece of metal that you're torquing
Yeah.
on. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That so yeah, that unfortunately I didn't get to fly with the F-111, but
Yeah,
it was an
that's too bad.
amazing plane. The Australians flew it much longer than we did, and
And did
they
it very well.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. I mean, they from Australia you could also strike anywhere. So I don't know
yeah.
what they're going to replace it with, you know.
They replaced it with EF-1 or EF-18 Hornets. The
But it doesn't
F-18 Super
have the
Hornets.
range, and
No, it
does it?
doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Hmm. Okay, well, tell me your requirements and I'll tell you what's best, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they bought Super
Yeah.
Hornets. They replaced all their legacy Hornets with Super Hornets, and that's what they
Hmm.
fly now is Super Hornets.
Yeah. Also a
So
cool aircraft.
yeah, it is a very cool aircraft.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in your email, you have uh books. Talk to us
Yes.
about some of your books, and
Yeah. So
it says kids books, as a matter of fact.
that's right. So obviously we love aviation, but
Mm-hmm.
then I've always been artistically inclined, art and writing and stuff. But
Yeah,
then one day my kid, my 5-year-old, well, my
yeah,
first kid, my youngest, he was
yeah,
5 at the time, and he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. So I went to
yeah.
Amazon and said, okay, Navy SEALs for kids. And there was none. I said, wait a minute. There's no Navy SEALs for kids books? There has to be one. And there's no US Air Force pilot for kids? What the heck? So I made them. And then Blue Angels for kids. I can show them all to you.
Sure.
And then they started doing pretty well. I'm not,
Uh-huh.
what do you call it? I'm not totally self-employed. That's my goal.
Yeah,
But
you're not J.K. Rowling yet.
no, 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 not yet. But I'm getting there. Yeah.
Well, show
Anyways,
some of
yeah.
it to us.
So I started making a bunch of them, and then I got into, it turned out I started getting feedback from people, and they really liked them, and it's
Yeah,
the leadership thing too, because when I was in the Air Force, it was the 80s, and when I grew up, it was all about unity.
yeah,
And when I joined
yeah,
the Air Force, it was even more unity.
yes.
And then came the 90s and 2000s, and everything was about diversity, which is divide.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like the 80s better.
Yeah,
We're all American, doesn't
yeah,
matter what color of your skin and all of that stuff. So
yeah.
I really enjoyed that unity message. And so so I don't preach in my books. I'm going to show you some. I don't
Okay,
preach in them. But
sure.
what's also important is what's not in them, right?
Yeah.
There's no preaching and no politics, just
Mm-hmm.
good old stuff.
Uh-huh.
And did you know did you know, for example, that the Marines Air Force is older than the United States Air Force?
Actually, I did know that.
You did know that.
I did know that. Yeah.
Because the Army Air Force and the Marines started in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marines only started like one day after the Army Air Force. And they have some of the coolest jets in the world. They got, you know, Harriers and F-35 jump jets and stuff. And I don't know if this is going to come through, but
yeah, actually, it's pretty good.
F4U Corsair. And the kids
Great
love
airplane.
these books because I really concentrate on the pictures. If you want to get boys to read, you got to have a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
So 5 to 9 years old, 9 to 12 years old. And I wanted to show you something else. So in some of them, I've got the QR codes, and then the kids can scan it and it goes straight to the video of the chopper. So
cool.
Yeah, so I'm getting some really good feedback from all of these books, and I put it on my website, of course. And you know what? I'm just gonna get them all out here.
Okay.
Oh my God, there's too many. Too many. Oh boy. Okay. So this is almost my complete product palette. I'm just gonna go through the highlights though. I don't want to journals. Get kids into journaling. Navy SEALs. This is heavy on pictures.
What a cool idea.
Yeah, kids love it too. But you know, these don't sell as well. I guess I got to do some advertising.
Yeah.
But you can ride in them, and they got some really cool pictures of the Navy SEALs. And
that's
problem
cool.
with these, yeah, thank you. The problem with these full color books is they're expensive.
Yeah.
So and Amazon after Corona rose all of the prices. So it's hard for us authors to keep the price down and affordable.
Yeah.
Hero Dogs.
Oh no, that'd be a fascinating book to read.
Yeah, I'll send you some books.
Okay.
My newest adventure is trying to get kids to write because my second grader. So you do your ABCs, and then at the end you get to shoot the 50 cal, or just shoot a normal gun, or shoot the 20mm cannon. You know, you got to go through the row, and then you get to shoot the cannon. I got the A10. I got the M1 Abrams. I got the A10 Thunderbolt in here somewhere too. Got to have him. Anyways,
cool idea.
Oh man, okay, but this is the book I was talking. This is the book that started it all when my son said he wanted to be a Navy SEAL, and he was 5 years old. So this book is probably the youngest, and it got, you know. So can you do 100 push-ups? You know, and then it goes. See, because the whole deal is, if your kids won't listen to you, they'll listen to the Navy SEALs. So I couldn't get my son to do push-ups, but then I made the book, and then he was doing push-ups. So I was so proud of myself, you know. I tricked him into doing push-ups so anyways.
So where do you buy these things?
Amazon.
Amazon. They're all on Amazon?
Yeah, they're available on my website too, but that just links to Amazon.
Okay.
So the next step is to get my own shop, but Amazon is 90% of the sales, and I could try to get into libraries or something.
Yeah.
So anyways, how many do you want to see? I got How to Get to Mars for Kids. I got a bunch.
All right, you got
of
Air
stuff.
Force books? Air Force?
Oh yeah, yeah. Here, wait a second. Coming up right here. United States Air Force pilot for kids. And got some cool, this guy here, man, I contacted him, a real pilot, F-15 pilot, and he helped me a little bit with the book. And so this is actually made with the, you know what? I don't know.
Remember his name?
Got to dig out the email because I didn't put it in the book.
No worries.
I don't know why I didn't put it in the book. Anyways, this one's a pretty hefty book, and also one of my best sellers.
Yeah, that is a pretty thick book.
Yeah, and again, these are the full color ones. So this is the best paper that Amazon offers, right? So these are really durable. Also, they'll last. And I got, you know, everything in there from the Air Force.
Yeah, the gun port on the F-16. That's what that is. You know,
I got a section about dogfighting. And
that was one of the original tests of the Sidewinder missile that you showed here.
oh,
just
you
a second ago.
saw it. You know
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah, I
know
do.
that.
Yeah, that's one of the original tests for the Sidewinder air-to-air
Yeah.
heat-seeking missile, and that's what that
Yeah.
missile is.
Yeah, sure
Okay.
is.
The next one
Sure
is the
is.
AMRAAM. I think you said it looked like an AMRAAM. Turn the page.
Yeah, that's the AMRAAM, Advanced Medium Range.
Air-to-air missile. Yeah. Oh yeah. See, that's what it is. There's a Strike Eagle popping flares.
Yep. Yep. Got it all in there.
Yeah.
And
You really do.
got
That's
the
really amazing.
F-35s in here.
Uh-huh.
F-35s. Oh, and of course, don't forget the good old A-10 blowing up tanks with Mavericks, AGMs. I think
I
the
know, isn't
A-10
that
is my
amazing?
favorite plane next to the F-15. And
Yeah.
a little bit, I've actually gotten one or two bad feedbacks about this picture.
Oh,
They
it's an
said it
Iraqi.
wasn't,
It's a blown up Iraqi tank.
yeah, not age
Yeah,
appropriate.
T-54.
But
T-54.
out of thousands, one out of a
Pictures.
thousand. Yeah.
You've got thousands of pictures in these things, and they're worried about one picture.
Yeah. Navy
Yeah.
SEALs dogs.
Oh, those are some cool stories, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're really cool. Did you know that the dog's nose has 220 million scent receptors?
No, I
And
didn't
this
know
is
that.
a real
I didn't know that.
what do you call it? A real operation in
Yeah. The
Afghanistan.
dog goes in, yeah, clears the building. helps clear the
Astronauts for
building.
kids.
Now that would be fascinating because I was interested in astronauts when I was a kid. You know,
So this is why I had to make the Mars book. I showed you the Mars book a minute ago because this is actually, I almost called it the SpaceX book because it has a Starship in it and all that. Because
Yeah.
now Saturn V is no longer the most powerful rocket ever made. And so
Yeah,
this book
you're
is
right.
already several years old.
Yeah.
And at the time, Saturn V was the most powerful rocket ever made. And people really like this book too.
The
I'll
cover
tell
of
you
your
how a
book,
rocket engine works. What?
the cover of your book is the very first time that astronauts went untethered, not
Ava,
not tethered to the
EVA.
spacecraft.
Yeah.
During
Yes.
this EVA, his name was
Yes.
McCandless, and
Yep.
he had this backpack on, and this was the very first EVA they've ever done where the astronaut wasn't tethered to the capsule or tethered
Correct.
tethered
That's all in
to I think it was the shuttle. They weren't on the shuttle.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Got it back there. And there's a video, of course.
Yeah.
And you
I
can
see the
scan it
QR
and go
code.
straight to the video. Yeah, one of my
Wow.
favorite books. And then don't forget, okay, the Navy, Blue Angels, and
yeah.
Navy Pilot for kids. This one, Navy pilots
that's a great book.
comments on Amazon about it. They were really stoked
That's
about
a
this
really
one.
cool squadron too. The story behind that squadron is pretty interesting because it's one of the oldest squadrons in the Navy.
Oh, which one? You recognize it?
Yeah, VF-31 Tomcatters.
Right on.
Has Felix the cat on the tail. Walt Disney actually drew that for them in the World War
Awesome.
I period. And they have had that symbol on their airplanes ever since.
I should have talked to you. I've got to put that in the book now.
I can send you all that if you ever do a reprinting. But yeah, that's their call sign is Tomcatter, and that's the name of their squadron, Tomcats.
Awesome. And I'm gonna look that up with Felix. F-18.
Yeah, the Felix squadron has been around ever since World War I.
Wow, that is so cool. Anyway, I got a lot of books. Oh, I even have a coloring book. Even have a Navy SEALs coloring book with super high resolution. You can color the patches and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I got all the well, it's not, is it 7? I don't remember, because remember they skipped numbers because of Dick Marcinko and Red Cell when he made DevGru. SEAL Team 6.
Yes.
They only had 3.
Yeah.
But he went to 6 to scare the Soviets.
Yeah.
That guy was crazy. Yeah. So
he's got a fascinating book. When you read his book,
Marcinko's book, I read him.
Really fascinating guy.
5 of his. Yeah, I consider the first 2 or 3 mandatory. What is it? The first one is Rogue Warrior, and then Red Cell. Yeah. And then I forgot.
I think Rogue Warrior should be read by everybody, particularly anybody that wants to be a SEAL.
I love that book.
He's the guy that founded SEAL Team 6. And
yep.
You read this book and you think, this
Yeah.
guy's a crazy man.
I
All
like
right.
the part where he ate the poison sac from the cobra.
Oh yeah. He did
Yeah.
a lot of crazy things.
Yeah.
Opening his parachute below the bridge, you
On
know, and hitting
purpose.
on
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah.
all those kinds of things. I mean,
Halo.
he
Oh,
was,
he didn't he invent Halo? High
yeah, I
altitude,
think
low
he was one of the
opening.
people that was involved with the very
Yeah.
first Halo jumps. I mean, he was involved in a lot of things. Okay. A
Yeah.
lot of things.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
did some really incredible stuff. So
You know what bugs me is I missed him. I was living in Orange County when he
yeah,
started Red Cell, and when
yeah.
he mock attacked the Seal Beach Naval Weapons Station.
Great
That's
story.
Yeah, and that was on near Westminster Boulevard where I lived. And I didn't know it till years later when I read his book, went right down under my nose. Pretty crazy, really crazy.
Westminster Boulevard.
Yeah.
I remember that well.
You were there.
I was born in LA. I was born in Inglewood.
Oh, that's right. That's why I was, yeah,
Yeah, I was born in
exactly.
Inglewood. I used to spend a lot of time at Randy's Donuts right before we'd go to
Okay.
the air. We would go to Los Angeles International Airport. And you
Yeah.
could park on Aviation Boulevard right there underneath the runways. Okay.
Nice.
And of course now that street is still there, that road's still there. And I walked along it, you know, and I was worried, you know, am I going to get in trouble for this? And it had a sign that says, you know, this is being patrolled or monitored by the Los Angeles International Airport Police, and had a phone number. And I called it and I said, hey, look, you know, of course, they, you know, what's the nature of the emergency? I said, no emergency, but I'm here as a photographer and I'm going around the fences here. Okay. There's certain areas that are completely fenced off. I'm not going into those. I'm just walking along the fences, and this is the fence I'm at now. And the gal says, okay, wait a minute. And then she came back and she says, okay, we see you now. You know, oh, that's interesting. And they said, no, look, as long as you're not on the wrong side of the fence, you're okay. You can do whatever you want. Okay. And I think I took 3,000 pictures in 3 days. Because you're at Los
Wow.
Angeles International Airport, and there's all kinds of airplanes flying into Los Angeles International Airport. There's
But you took
A3.
them with film cameras. You had to develop the film.
Well, back when I was a kid, yeah, but you know,
Yeah.
about how long has it been since I've been down there? It's been about 2 years since I've been down there. Okay, and I always do the same thing, because this is what my grandfather did with his grandkids. He would take us to Randy's Donuts, the donut place with the big donut on top of the
Yeah,
of the
it's
thing. Okay.
iconic.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
iconic. Exactly. It's in the second Iron Man movie. It's been
Yep.
in a lot of other movies too.
Yeah.
But they have some of the best apple fritters I've ever had. I mean, just and they're huge too. They're big. And the place is closed, I think, on Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, and New Year's. And it's open 24 hours the rest of the
Wow.
time. You
Wow.
can go there at 3 o'clock in the morning and get a
Dang.
fresh apple fritter, literally almost out of the fryer.
I'm gonna have to
And
go
they're
there
good.
next time
Yeah.
I'm there.
Oh yeah. And if I remember right, I think it's on Westminster. I'm gonna have to look. I'll send you the thing when I find it.
Okay.
But that's one of the things that we did when I was a kid is we'd go to Randy. My grandfather would take us to Randy's Donuts. We get a dozen donuts, and then he would take
Awesome.
us to the end of the runway. You know, and so we got chocolate all over our mouths, eating chocolate donuts or whatever, watching airplanes come overhead. That's kind of my aviation origin story. That's what got me started in
Awesome.
aviation, was being in LA.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
LA. California's not that bad. Everybody's ragging on it lately. But politics aside,
yeah, politics
California
aside,
is
I was just going to
wonderful.
say politics aside. And
Yeah.
the last time I was back there, when I was a kid, there was actually a lot of homes off the end of the runways going west.
Hmm.
And that has been completely cleared out now.
Oh.
But they have, and this is really strange, they have each side of the street fenced off, but not the street. And so the houses that those homes were at, you can still drive quite a ways. And of course, when you get to the crest of the hill, you're looking down into the airport. And I always have said to myself, I want to go there and watch the airplanes go over my head. And every once in a while they do what they call reverse ops, where they're coming in from the beach and landing over the beach
Hmm.
and then taking off out over 405 freeway, which is really
Yeah.
weird. Really weird.
Yeah. Santana
Particularly,
winds reverses
yeah,
everything.
exactly. Thank you. Thank you. There's the Santana winds, and as you know, they blow pretty strong
Yep.
when they come in. So that was one of the things that I used to do when I was a kid. Was I loved aviation ever since I was 5 years old, and knew what an airplane was, and that was some of the
Yeah.
things that we did. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Cool. What, and so besides the KC-135, what's your favorite plane?
oh geez, you know, it's funny you should ask this because everybody asks me that, and and you know what I've started doing, Eric? I tell
Hmm.
everybody it's all based on time period. All right.
Yeah.
Because if you go World War One, it's the Fokker triplane and the Spad.
Yeah.
But there
Yeah.
are other airplanes that flew during the war that were just as famous. Sopwith Camel, you know,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
DR7, Fokker DR7.
Yeah.
They had
Pretty cool stuff.
they had what was called the Fokker Scourge, okay, where
Hmm.
the Fokker airplanes were just shooting our guys down like crazy.
Hmm.
And one of the people I would love to meet from that time period, everybody goes, I want to meet the Red Baron, all this kind of stuff. No, I want to meet Anthony Fokker, the guy that was the
Huh.
engineer and the brains behind Fokker airplanes. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, World War II. God, there's so many good airplanes in World War II. So many. But to say specifically, P-51, obviously, um, the ME-109
Mhm.
and the Japanese Zero.
Mhm.
I think those were the top airplanes of World War II, and nothing outclassed the Mustang. You
Hmm.
know, it was
Yeah.
such an engineering marvel.
Yeah.
It was the F-22 Raptor of its day. It really
Yeah.
was.
They made it to escort the bombers. That's why it
Yeah.
had a little bit longer wings than usual.
Well, and there was a lot of other things that they did in it too. And the story of how it got the Rolls-Royce engine
Hmm.
is really fascinating. It wasn't designed to get a Rolls-Royce engine,
Hmm.
and the engine that was in it wasn't doing what they wanted it to. That it wasn't giving them the performance that they wanted.
Was an Allison or something.
It was an Allison engine, okay, similar to the ones that were in the P-38s, because they wanted to go with this commonality thing, so
Hmm.
that the logistics tail behind the airplane wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
And the P-51 Mustang had so many new technologies in it. The laminar flow wing, the shape of the
Hmm.
fuselage, the radiator
Yeah.
underneath,
Yeah.
and everybody understands the Packard Merlin engine. And the
Yeah.
story of how that engine ended up in the P-51 is the thing that, MBA schools should be having somebody
But
write a paper on.
how did it end up in the P-51?
So what happened was, um, first of all, the design was for the English. It was going to
Right.
be an all English airplane. And they wanted to change the engines out because the original Allison engine didn't give them the performance they were looking for. But they knew that the Merlin would, the Rolls-Royce Merlin would. And
Hmm.
a guy from Rolls-Royce told Tommy Hitchcock, who was the air attaché over there, a real, shall we say, a real masculine man's man, okay? Would play polo and everything. I mean, really, quite the gentleman. God, what was his name? His name escapes me right now, but it's the guy that is at Supermarine and um, Rolls
The
Royce,
British engineer.
the British engineer, but he's a fighter pilot. Okay. And he's going, look,
Eric something.
yeah. And he says, this airplane would be so much better with this engine in it.
Yeah.
And Tommy Hitchcock is going, they'll never do it
Hmm.
because you have Made in America, you have Ford, all these different people. So they took they were P-51B-10s, which had the fastback, you know, and everything. The fastback, it wasn't the bubble hood. It was the previous one. And they called them Mustang X, P-51X, and they took 10 of them and put the Packard Merlin engine in it. And they were so shocked at the performance in it that it literally, they went, every airplane should have one of these. Well, they don't.
Yeah.
They have Allison engines. And he's going, wait, we've got to fix this. So Tommy Hitchcock goes back to the United States with all this data going, look, this is truly a 450-mile-an-hour airplane now because of the change of this engine. And that's what everybody was looking for. They wanted an airplane that could go high at 450 knots. And this thing would do it low. The Allison engine was really good from surface to about 20,000 feet. The Merlin engine was good from sea level to like 50,000 feet. Okay.
Wow. Piston jobber at 50,000 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. A piston job.
Wow.
And so Hitchcock comes back to the States and he goes, we need to buy these things. We need to buy these things. We need to buy these things. No takers. No takers. So Henry Ford says, I ain't touching this, because he was an isolationist. He was not into all of these international war games or anything like that. They came to him and they said, we got $130 million contract. 1940s, $130 million was billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars. And typical of Ford, he goes, if we do it at my plant, we're going to do it my way. I'm not sharing the information with anybody, yada, 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 yada. And they told Henry Ford, pound sand. So the British team says, okay, where do we go from here? And they says, well, let's go to the automakers that are making the best engines. And one of those engine subassembly folks was David and Doug Packard, because they're literally saying, okay, Henry Ford makes a great engine, Packard Brothers make a great engine, Oldsmobile makes a great engine. And they really got a sour taste for Henry Ford because of his isolationism and everything. And they said, okay, who's next? And they go, well, the Packard Brothers. Got to go see the Packard Brothers. And they go and they see the Packard Brothers, and Doug and Dave are kind of looking at each other like, you know, what's going on here? But they realize, Rolls-Royce realizes that the Packard engines are by far the finest engines made in America. And so they show them the Merlin engine. And of course, the Packard Brothers are going, you know, if we do this, it'll make it about 10% more efficient. If we do this, you probably get about, I don't know, 15 to 20 knots of speed or whatever. They start going through all this stuff with the Rolls-Royce guy, and they're going, this is the place to do it. So Packard ends up making the Merlin engine for the P-51s in their facility in Michigan, in Detroit.
Awesome.
And they put the Packard Merlin engine in the P-51, and the performance is just phenomenal. All right. But still nobody wanted it. Well, it's a British engine. We have to buy American, all this kind of stuff. He goes, look, we've got through all that already. We got through all that already. We're going to have Packard build it. And a lot of people said, no, we ain't doing it. So literally the engine did not have anybody that would build it until finally the Packard Motor Company says, well, if nobody wants to help us, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And they did. And the rest, as they say, is history, because
Awesome.
the performance of that engine was just incredible, particularly in the P-51, So finally they show these tests, and they show, you know, Congress and everything. Hey, we've tested a new engine. Here's what we see. And everybody realizes, well, now we have a fighter plane that can go 450 knots and do it at 475, 47,000 feet. And they're all like going, woohoo, this is a good thing. And that's how the engine ended up getting the P-51.
Yeah, then they had to finally build it because reality, huh?
Yeah. Well, and what happened is Dave and Doug Packard went and walled off an area of the Packard Car Company assembly area, and they made that into the for lack of a better term, womb of the marriage of the P-51 and the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, you know, and as they say, the rest is just history, because
Yeah.
it's just historic how that airplane was able to perform with that engine in it. And of course,
That's cool.
the Packard brothers came to him and they says, you know what? If we put a double stage supercharger in the engine vice the single stage, I think it would be better. And sure enough, it was way better. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the cool thing was Packard made a deal with Rolls-Royce saying, if we find something that makes the thing more efficient, more effective, whatever, we'll share it with you. We would prefer you guys to give us the same courtesy. And they go, yeah, fine. And so it was $130 million contract in World War II.
Nice.
In the 1940s, that's like,
Yeah.
you know, the $1 trillion
Billion or
contract.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
billions,
Yeah.
billions of dollars, you know, maybe even $1 trillion.
Yeah.
But of course, that engine changed the way that airplane did business because of its
Yeah.
performance. It really, really enhanced that airplane. Anyway, long answer to your question, but that's how it came
That's
about.
fine.
You know what?
Yeah.
I've got a really great article that a guy named Bob Dorr wrote. I'll send to you on how that engine ended up in the P-51 and how it ended up, you know, and everything else too, you know, because now the Spitfires got it. The bombers are getting it, you know, because it's such an efficient engine. So,
Yeah.
and to give you an idea of how efficient the radial engine in the P-47, and as we know, the P-47 could not get to Berlin and back on internal, external fuel because it only got 1.8 miles per gallon.
Oh,
The Packard Merlin engine got 3.3. It almost doubled.
wow.
And that's why they could fly these long, long escort missions, because the P-51 was such an engineering marvel with its radiator, the wings, the way the wings were attached to the fuselage, all of that stuff was just, you know, seriously, and it made it into a
But
incredible airplane,
the
you know?
P-47 and the
Mhm.
F-4U Corsair had that double wasp
Mm-hmm.
radial from Pratt and Whitney. Wasn't that the most powerful engine?
That was, but that was later in the war.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah.
The later
But
versions of the Corsair had that big monster Curtiss Wright radial engine.
they could maybe go faster, but not as far then, huh?
Correct.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea, the P-47 with its radial engine got 1.8 miles per gallon. Okay?
Yeah.
The Packard Merlin Mustangs got 3.3 miles per gallon.
Yeah,
Almost
that's
doubled.
Yeah,
Okay?
that, and exactly, and that's why they were the escorts for the bombers then,
exactly.
because a bunch of the weren't they crazy in World War II? Because in the beginning, they were flying over in the bombers, and they didn't have the P-51 Mustang, so their escorts would only go so far, and then they'd have to wave and say, "Okay, you're on
Yeah.
your own now," and the fighters would turn back, and the bombers would
Yes.
fly
Yeah.
alone.
And you saw that in Masters of the Air.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It showed the
I'll have to check that
contrast
out.
where the P-47s have, okay, we've got as far as we can go. All right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. All of those units transitioned to P-51 Mustangs
Yeah.
and we're tearing it up. All right.
Yeah.
The P-38 shows up in Europe and it's got icing problems and cold weather problems, all those kinds of things. And Spot says, get those things out of here. You know, they had them there for a short period of time. Get those things out of here.
But they were good airplanes too, right?
When they were fighting in the Pacific, in the hot, humid air, they were fabulous. And they had Allison engines. That's the other crazy thing. They had Allison engines. And yeah, the P-38, you know, Dick Bong gets 40 kills in a P-38. The guy that's behind him, you know, McDonald or McGuire gets 38 kills. I mean, they were racking up kills like crazy. And of course, the P-38 with external tanks could stay up forever. And there's a famous intercept where a group of P-38s goes out. They find out that, you know, Yamamoto is going to fly to this island. And they actually meet him as he's coming into the pattern, shoot him down and kill him over a place called Bougainville. But,
oh, wow. I'm going to read up on that.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
Charles Lindbergh comes over and teaches the P-38 guys how to trim the throttles, trim the airplane, polish the airplane, all those kinds of things. to get extra speed and extra range out of the P-38s, because at that time period, he was still very famous
Yeah.
for his cross-Atlantic flight. Okay.
Mm.
And he actually comes over there, and there's rumors that they actually let him go out and fly a couple of combat missions so that he could get some kills. All right.
Yeah.
And there's a book called Get Yamamoto that was written a long
Okay.
time ago. The operation, I think, was called Operation Vengeance. But
Okay.
the book's called Get Yamamoto, and it goes through the whole planning and execution of the mission. You know, the guys land after flying this long mission, and they're all soaking wet because they're inside those P-38 cockpits and all that glass around them. It was like being in a, you know,
Oven.
a flower, you know,
Yeah.
those
Glass
humidified-
house. What do you call it?
yeah,
Hot
glass
house.
house, a
Yeah.
hot house. Thank you. It's like being in this hot house, and they're all just dripping with sweat when they get done. But you know what? They killed the two Betty bombers that he was supposed to be in. And a matter of fact, his goes down. Yamamoto's actually goes down in the jungle, and it takes him 2 days to get out there to it. But he's dead when they find him from a 50 caliber bullet. I think that went through his chest or something like that.
Oh, that'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't they use the P-38 in Europe then for the
'Cause
escorts?
It wasn't a good cold weather airplane. It wasn't a good cold weather airplane. And it would ice up, and the superchargers, there was something about being in the cold with the superchargers that made them less efficient or something. I can't remember what it was. Or just ice up, period. All right. And it's a great airplane, don't get me wrong. But the environmentals of flying it in Europe versus flying in the Pacific were much better for it flying in the Pacific. Much better.
Interesting.
So, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. They made a lot of advances in those 5 years. They
They
invented
really did.
fuel injections. We had, when I was training to be an aircraft mechanic, we used to take apart the pressure carburetors, which were the pre-fuel injection.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty crazy stuff.
Amazing stuff. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, brother, I gotta go. Okay.
Okay. It was great talking to you.
Eric, it's been great to have you back on again. And I'm gonna combine these two together. So that
That's fine.
They're one long episode. But thanks again, Eric, for being on the Lessons from the Cockpit show, talking to us about your books.
Thank you.
About hang
it was a
gliding
pleasure
and
to be
sailboating.
here.
And I appreciate you doing that. Thanks for being
Great.
on.
And next time you're going to be on my podcast.
Just tell me when and where. Okay.
Okay. Thanks a
All
lot.
right. All right.
See you. Bye.
See ya. Folks, I hope you really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun doing this with Eric. I don't know a lot about hang gliding or sailplaning, running around on air currents until now. And I've got a copy of one of his books on the United States Air Force, folks, and it's fabulous. Talks about how to get into the Air Force, the rank structure, bases. I mean, it's a fabulous book, folks. And I'll have the link for his books in the show notes. This episode is financially supported by Wall Pilot, custom aviation art for the walls of your home, office, or hangar, just like the one you see here behind me. We have 149 ready to print 4, 6, and 8 foot graphics on vinyl that you can peel off and stick to any wall. And yes, they are waterproof, we have found out. Or let us do a custom one for you. Your favorite aircraft. We put your name on it from a particular unit that you like, even your tail number and custom bomb mode. We can do all of that. Go to wallpilot.com and order a couple of these, because that's what keeps our show going. We're setting up Patreon right now and a Discord channel that we can talk on also. That's coming very soon. And tomorrow, 10,000 7.5 inch by 3 inch graphics stickers for water bottles or whatever you want to put them on. They're going to show up. So we'll be selling those really soon too. I really appreciate all of you coming by, download these and listening to them. It means a lot to me that you'd be even interested in old tanker guy and what he has to say. This and previous episodes are found on my YouTube channel at Mark Hasara. Join our All Ranks Club for a small monthly fee and get access to new videos and new episodes coming out. We're going to have a Hornet MiG killer on pretty soon, a couple of F-14 Bubbas of mine, and even a retired Marine Major General who flew Phantoms during the Vietnam War for the Marine Corps. So look forward to those shows coming up here pretty soon, folks. Again, thanks for coming by and spending time with me here. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. This is Sluggo out here. See ya.